The Sinclair brothers present the best of 2020 video games.
Hi, I'm Evan Sinclair.
And I'm Ryan Sinclair.
And we'd like to share our favorite games of 2020 with you.
But first, we'd like to recognize some games that we didn't finish or didn't get to play that we felt might have made our lists.
The games I didn't get to play this year that I felt could have made my list were Persona 5 Royal and Spelunky 2. Now, I've played through the original version of Persona 5, and it was one of my favorite games of 2016, but I just could not commit another 100 plus hours to that game this year. It just too much, had a lot on my plate. Spelunky 2, I just didn't get around to. I actually haven't even played Spelunky 1, but it looks like something that I would love a lot. The games that I didn't get to finish this year were 13 Sentinels, Aegis Rim, Hades, and Kentucky Route Zero. They are all great games so far. I just didn't want to consider them for my best of list until I finished them.
Spelunky 2 for me also seemed like a game that I would have liked to play this year, but honestly that goes for a lot of games this year. I didn't play too many 2020 releases just on the account of I have been playing a lot of multiplayer games that were older and some 2019 releases that were Epic Games Store exclusives until 2020, namely Borderlands 3, Outer Worlds, and Outer Wilds. I do have a handful of 2020 releases that I haven't finished, but you know what? Fuck it. They're making the list. I played them enough to know they're the best of the year.
Is that cheating?
I don't care. That doesn't matter. This is my list. First up on my list is Hades. Which is a butter-smooth roguelite with brilliant art design, great voice acting, and an expertly crafted balance of gameplay and ambient story progression, following the son of Hades who is trying to endlessly escape the underworld. The core gameplay allows for several styles of play and builds, and is packed with voice lines and story elements to explore between each escape attempt. I haven't beaten the game yet, but I've gotten to the boss waiting for you outside the underworld once. Even though I'm sure I have plenty of time before I'm done with Hades, it has proven to be an incredibly well-crafted game and is definitely among my favorites of 2020 and one of my favorite roguelikes in general.
My first pick is Animal Crossing New Horizons. I've been a fan of Animal Crossing since the original GameCube version, and while I know that I would have enjoyed this game no matter what, the timing of the pandemic kind of turned it into something bigger than just a game. It was a way for people to connect over this mutual wholesome thing during these dark times. It personally reconnected me with a couple old friends and even brought new friends into my life. I won't lie, I haven't touched it in months because it started feeling more like a chore than a game, but for those first couple months in the pandemic, it really was like this guiding light of hope. And for that reason alone, I have to salute it as one of the best games of 2020.
It goes without saying that my next pick is a game that definitely needs time to get in shape, but nonetheless, the lack of polish can't hide that Cyberpunk 2077 is a great game even underneath all of those tarnished expectations.
Come on, V. Let's get you home.
Cyberpunk 2077 marries exploration of a vast open world with kinetic combat, story-changing player choices, and robust character development, all to bring you into our vision of the dark future.
The core missions are fun, the characters are great with plenty of depth, the combat is open with several ways to approach fights and combat, and the city is just gorgeous. I've been playing the game pretty slow to immerse myself and have time for side missions, so I have not gotten around to finishing the campaign yet, but I've played enough to know that as flawed as Cyberpunk is, there's enough good content there to solidify a spot on my list. I have faith that in a year's time or so, this game will have made great strides toward being the next-gen RPG we hope it can become.
I also have something to say about Cyberpunk, but until then, I'd like to bring up the next favorite game on my list, which is Ori and the Will of the Wisps. Metroidvanias are one of my favorite game genres, and Ori and the Will of the Wisps is one of the best ones I've ever played. It's always gorgeous to look at, and they've improved upon the mechanics from the first one in almost every way. It definitely took a lot of notes from Hollow Knight for the better, actually. The ball of light weapon from the first one is now a sword. They've added in like small side quests, kind of like Hollow Knight has, and they greatly improved upon the save system. When I picked this game up this year, I could not put it down for the next couple of days until I beat it, and I'm really hoping they make a third one and only continue to improve upon the mechanics that they have for this gorgeous world they've created.
Despite not finishing it, Ori is going to have to make my list as well, pretty much for every reason Evan just said. Hollow Knight is one of my favorite games of all time, and any influence Ori took from it was very welcomed. They've done a great job.
So the next game on my list is easily the most violent one, and that is Doom Eternal. Now, I loved the 2016 reboot of Doom, and this one only ramped up everything from that one. That being said, I do have a couple of criticisms. The boss fights left a lot to be desired. The Marauders just pissed me off, and the attempt to add more story to this world just didn't really work for it. But most importantly, with a game like this, id Software's dialed the action up to 11. The way that this game pushes you to keep slaughtering demons to get your health, ammo, and armor back is one of the most genius things I've seen in a first-person shooter, and a really good antithesis to the duck and cover style of first-person shooters that a lot of us are familiar with. This game keeps the adrenaline at a steady high throughout, and I can't wait to get around to playing the DLC that just came out for it.
Before we talk about our number one favorites, we'd like to bring up some honorable mentions.
I have a couple honorable mentions this year. The first being Cyberpunk 2077, or more specifically, exploring Night City in Cyberpunk 2077 on PC. As the entire world knows by now, Cyberpunk's an unfinished game filled with bugs. It's not the game it sold itself to be yet, but exploring Night City, specifically on PC, was such an incredible experience in its own that I just had to bring it up as one of my favorite gaming experiences of the year. My second honorable mention is Demon's Souls. Haven't played the PS5 version yet, but I adore the PS3 version, and I know in my bones that the PS5 remake is just as awesome, so I'm gonna bring it up. Book it.
Whack. I had two honorable mentions this year, first of which was Animal Crossing New Horizons. Like Evan said, it was a great time to have Animal Crossing during the pandemic. Nice and wholesome thing for you to connect with friends over. But my interest definitely waned after the first couple months. After a certain point, you have to be pretty hardcore about it to keep up. And in my opinion, that grind was not too fun. My second honorable mention goes to TemTem. TemTem is an unashamed Pokemon clone MMO in early access with promise and ambition, hoping to make customers out of old school Pokemon players who are currently unsatisfied with the franchise's direction. I didn't return to it too much, but I really respect giving a multi-billion-dollar franchise like Pokemon a bit of legitimate competition.
I think it's kind of funny that we each had picks that were on each other's honorable mentions lists and vice versa.
Yeah, it is kind of funny. I actually kind of like how our number one favorites ended up on each other's lists. Speaking of number one favorites... There might have been bigger and more technically impressive releases that came out this year, but it could only have been one game for me in 2020, and that is Risk of Rain 2. Risk of Rain 2 is a roguelike set in a distant planet in which the player collects items to upgrade their character and fight bosses to advance through stages until they beat the final boss or die. I sunk an ungodly amount of time into this game, and I don't see that changing in 2021. The replay value in this game is unheard of in my opinion, thanks to an incredible cast of characters with diverse playstyles, as well as a huge selection of items with which you strengthen those characters for each run with unique combinations. The gameplay loop is smooth and satisfying, and there's not much better than a successful god run in this game. I gotta give props to the dev team, Hopu Games, who were super transparent and open to feedback throughout early access and really worked hard to make the game the best it could be. Risk of Rain 2 is an indie triumph and is easily one of my favorite games of all time.
I might not agree with everything Ryan said about Risk of Rain 2, but it is still an incredible game and the first roguelike I ever personally fell in love with. I sunk a lot of hours into it playing with Ryan and our friends, and I do not regret any second of that. And although it does make my best of the year list, it is not my game of the year. Because for me, my game of the year was the easiest pick I had to make out of all the categories this year. And the only game that I felt like truly pushed the entire medium of gaming forward, and that game is Half-Life Alyx.
You're gonna need a gun. Don't worry, it's unloaded. It's unloaded now. Combine cheddar's really picking up. They know you're coming. You need to get out of here now.
Half-Life Alyx is a VR first-person shooter and the first Half-Life game in over 10 years. It is one of the best games I've ever played in my entire life and easily the best VR game ever made. It's the first exclusively VR game where I felt that the level design, writing, art design, acting, really every aspect of a game design matched the level of quality that you'd expect from a high-end console or PC game.
It's an absolutely brilliant game that is undoubtedly at the cutting edge of gaming. I mean, had I not fallen in love with Risk of Rain as much as I did, this surely would have been at the top of my list as well. In particular, that mission with Jeff was one of the most fun gaming experiences I've ever had, honestly.
Yeah, that level with Jeff was really fun. Honestly, the whole game is just really fun. It's so responsive. The levels are designed so well to utilize VR to its fullest extent, and beating it honestly left me with this like intense melancholy feeling where I was happy I got to experience it, but I was so sad to see those credits roll because I know it is going to be a very long time before I experience something this groundbreaking again. And that concludes our list of favorite video games of 2020.
Thank you so much for watching, everyone. Your support really keeps us going.
Absolutely. And while those were our favorite games of 2020, we would still love to hear what yours are in the comments.
So put those down below, and we will see you in the next one.
Take it away, Gilbert.
Hi, this is Gilbert Gottfried. See? So look, can you just subscribe? Just subscribe. They're really, I've met Evan and Ryan and they're really sad. So subscribe.